Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, your resource for all things business, brand, and leadership. We are excited you have decided to join us today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Elevate Podcast. I'm Robert Kalin, your host here with
Tony Frasconi. Good to see you, everybody.
you guys. I am so excited. I've got one of my favorite people sitting across from me here, Miss Robin McCoy. It's great to have you.
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. We're going to continue the conversation around teams, specifically today talking about getting the right people on the team. And Robin, I can't think of anybody better to have this conversation with than you, because not only do you have experience in business, you have experience in nonprofit.
Yep.
You're a very well-rounded person to have this conversation with, and so I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. So let's get started.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing with our audience, kind of your background.
Okay.
Where did you get started, and where are you now? Kind of give us a little.
Well, how far back do you want to go? I think we were earlier just talking before the show, talking about prior to my business that I started a couple of years ago as a life coach, a holistic life coach. Prior to that, I was on staff at Champion Center for 14 years as their connections director, the executive connections director, which ultimately hired people for the team as well as brought in volunteer leaders and really managed, motivated, and led teams for the church. Prior to that, I was the general manager of a private club and restaurant. And so that was definitely, when I started there, what was interesting is they kind of had me go in as the cleanup person. So it was like evaluate everything and then clean house as need be. So that was one of their leading questions, which should have been a clue to me, is are you able to fire people?
Yeah.
And sure, never had done it before in my life. So
Yeah, they needed a sweeper. That's
yeah,
what
that's
they
what.
The axe. The axe.
Yes, not fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I learned the hard way.
That is hilarious.
Yes.
What did you learn from that?
From
Learning the hard way. I mean, you got put into a position where you had to go and lay
Yeah.
people off.
you have to learn how to have critical conversations and have them well.
Yeah.
Because ideally you want people to walk away from the table feeling good or feeling like this really is for their benefit. It is never comfortable being laid off or fired or having to let somebody go. I know that first time I lost sleep. I couldn't eat. I was shaking. It was a very unpleasant experience, but being mindful of how to approach the conversation, knowing it's in the best interests of everyone.
Yeah.
And trying to care for the person that you're having to let go as best as you can.
Yeah.
And some people take it well and some people don't. In that particular instance, they didn't, because I don't think that I did it particularly well.
Yeah. And typically when you do something for the first time, you don't do it well.
Right?
Right?
You have to be bad at something first in order to get good.
That's right.
Yes. Well, there you go.
But I love that because you pulled out a lot of wisdom there, and just the approach that you have to have and being mindful of it's what's best for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Going in with that attitude of how do I help them realize that this might not be the best fit. Maybe there's something else that they're gifted in or.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like the care part she said.
Yeah.
How you talked about caring for that individual in that moment, which means treating them with dignity and respect and keeping their humanity through a difficult process. And ideally, you hope for this outcome of them feeling good and shaking your hand at the end and saying thank you and goodbye. Whether that happens or not is really out of your control. But what is in your control is that care.
Yep.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even talking, calling out the potential, because if they're not the right fit there's a right fit for them somewhere.
Yeah.
And so to be able to really seek God and think about what is inside of them, and and advocate for them if you possibly can as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we've spent some time talking about getting people off the team.
Yes.
What
Yes.
about getting the right people on the team? What does that look like?
That's also learning the hard way of doing it wrong. And I can tell you that if you don't take the time to hire well or even recruit a team well, that you're going to have a more difficult time on the back end.
Yeah.
And so you do have to set up systems and processes, even for volunteer teams, not for profit. You still have to have a system and a process so that you are setting everybody up for success. So in the hiring process, we did, like at Champion Center, we had a series of 4 different interviews that we did. And the first, like even Craig Rochelle talks about that very first interview being with just a team member to see if they're even a fit for the culture.
Yeah.
And that really is important. You want to find people that fit your culture, not coming in, and you don't want somebody coming in and shifting the culture of your environment. So that's number one. And then hiring for passion and not for necessarily the skills. You can teach skills to anybody, right? But hiring for passion. So even getting that vibe off an individual when you're doing that initial interview will, propel them forward, or maybe this isn't the right fit and they're not going to go to the next step. Yeah. So that's the very first thing. The second set of interviews is with 2 people, and it's talking more about character, finding out what is it their values are, what is it that they like to do, family, and so just really talking a lot about who they are as an individual versus, same thing, the skills. The skill really is now I take that back, because unless it's a highly technical field and you have to have certain skills, then you are going to want to ask a lot of questions and get information and feedback on that. But for the most part, you can teach anybody anything. You probably know that, Robert, from what you do, right?
Absolutely. I think I love what you're saying. You're hiring for the attitude and the character and the passion. I think all of that is super important. Can you give a little bit of insight onto, you said you do the first interview with a single person. They're kind of looking for that attitude and cultural fit, and then you're doing 2 looking for character. Why do you have 2 people looking for character?
Because you might see something different than I see. So typically we try to have a male and a female in there because we just see things differently. We have a different perspective. We'll pick up on one person will pick up on something that somebody else won't. We take great notes, and then we share notes along the way so that people have really good information as they move through that interview process. So that's
I love this.
Yeah.
This is something we just started implementing recently, actually, over the last year, and has changed the game completely.
Yes, it's important.
Because little red flags, like you said, will come out, and you're like, one person might not pick it up, and another person does.
Yeah.
And to have those conversations and lay it all out on the table and say, hey.
Yeah, and I like the staggering approach of, vetting the skill a little bit at first, making sure that they can maybe do the job, and then at that next phase, unpacking who they are as a person, because then you want to line up not only the will, that they have the will to do the job based on what they're sharing as some of their personality, but aligning values and their core values with the organization's core values. And so you kind of have that ability in the second interview to kind of sync that up before you maybe move into the next one, which I'm guessing might be more about leadership when you get to the next round.
Yeah, and in between the second and the third, we do testing. So the DISC test, Enneagram. So we really want to get a little bit deeper dive into who they are and how they would fit on the team as well. I know that Patrick Loncioni's got some really great new things he's talking about as far as the team and the right people being in the right places on the team, which is super intriguing. And so I would love to play that out at some point in time. But when you dive into the DISC test, and even look at the Enneagram helps you kind of have a conversation so that people hear you. And you're knowing how to speak to somebody specific to their personality type, which then draws out more information, which is pretty cool. And the DISC test I love because you know your team already that's existing, and how is this person going to play with everybody in the sandbox? How are they going to fit? You really do want to make sure you're going to hire somebody that's going to fit in with the team. From
not only that, but that their personality will fit the role that they're going with. If you've got some data entry position, you definitely don't want the D personality,
Right.
trying to make that happen. So
Yeah. And you don't want somebody that did, like I was the connections director. So my whole, I was, the first impressions, everything about the space, everything about the people, everything about the experience. So you're not going to want to get somebody that's introverted, that's quiet. You actually need somebody that's going to smile and laugh and have fun and be outgoing. So yeah, that's a very good point, hiring for the position.
So I got a question for you. What is your favorite interview question that you've ever?
I want to know what they liked best about their last position that they had and what they liked least about it.
Okay.
How they answer matters.
Yeah.
So if they're critical, that's a flag for me. Right? If they're critical of the actual employer or the position. But if they're talking about, here's an experience that I had that wasn't good, and here's how I had fun. I want to know, too, the wins. What are their wins? How did they have a good time? What did they enjoy about doing what they were doing? And then why are they leaving?
That's good.
And so how they respond really matters, because are they going to come into our organization with an attitude, or, it just gives me information.
That's good.
Yeah.
Information gathering is so crucial. And I think I led interviews at a high level for a long time as an executive in HR. And I would agree that asking, what their past experience has been and listening for those key things about, is there overly critical, negative, personal attack on the former employer? And it just gives you that lens of, this is somebody who might not be able to let something go. This is somebody who might have a closed mindset, not a growth mindset.
Yes.
All of those things.
Yeah. Super important.
That's good. So for the employees who may be getting ready for an interview, maybe they want a job shift, thinking about how to answer those questions before you go into the interview. You don't know what they're going to ask, but preparing those questions to answer those questions, I think, is really key. But then for the employer, also on the other end, being able to say, we're asking these questions because we want to see these. Yep.
Yes. An attitude is everything. When you're hiring somebody, can I tell you a story?
Please.
I was prior to all of this, I was in the hospitality industry, event management, and I had gone and applied for a job at a hotel that was just opening up. It was being remodeled, so it had been torn down to the studs, being rebuilt, and I was going to interview for a position as the catering manager, which is kind of what I had been doing. So I went in and interviewed for that. They showed me around the space, and they were looking for two positions: the sales and marketing director, which would oversee the catering manager and the sales force, and the catering manager. And I was so excited about their space, and I was enjoying it. And they were really nice people, the people that were managing the hotel. And so I was having fun. I was complimenting the space, was excited because I could see what they saw. They shared the vision with me. So in hiring people, super important to share the vision with them as well. But so they were sharing all of this, and I got more and more excited. Well, when they eventually called me back for a second interview, they offered me the position of the sales and marketing director, which I had never done. So this goes back to the point of hiring for passion, and you can teach the skill. And they were willing to teach the skill. And at first, I declined it, and it was a lot more substantial, more money, because I had not done it. And I didn't want to come into that position and do them a disservice either. Yeah. And I didn't want to fail. And so they came back a second time and offered me the position, and I took it. And it was probably one of the most fun things I had ever done. Fun job, great boss. I enjoyed every second of it. But I got that position, and I had that much fun because of the right attitude.
That's awesome.
So if you're going in for an interview, going and applying, attitude is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question for you real quick. Is there any questions aside from maybe even HR questions, but is there any questions that you would avoid as an interviewer?
It's different in the church world or the nonprofit world versus being in corporate. There's very clear, distinct lines in corporate. In the church, you have a little bit more latitude. We actually interview the husband and the wife. in ministry when we were getting ready to hire somebody, because family matters and the life that you live matters. In corporate, you are obviously you have to avoid a lot of things. Age, right? So just all of the different regulations you would avoid, and figuring out how to still find out what you want to know in it by asking different questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So that's you do that ahead of time. I think to have a great hire, getting the right people on the team, you have to be prepared. You need to have a system and a process. It has to be clear. Your values as an organization has to be clear. And your mission, the vision of that organization has to be clear when you're interviewing somebody, because they want to know that they're going to fit as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, back to the former question, Robert, that you asked, which was one of what were some of her favorite questions.
Yeah.
For me, it was the one around, what do you know about the organization that you're applying to?
Yeah.
So we've looked at your resume. Obviously, you're here for, we've paper screened you in. Now tell us about not only why you applied, but tell us about the organization.
Yeah.
And that tells you something.
Yes. Yeah.
Right there.
100%.
If they have looked up the mission and the vision, they know about some of the key leadership moves that maybe the organization has done. They, if it's a for-profit, they may know data points about revenue, whatever they can find and share.
Yeah.
And those were always things that I really gleaned from the process as some of the people that outperformed others was those who could you just knew they had not only done their homework just to kind of check the box, but they had a passion and that values alignment. They got excited. They were like, this organization is me. I can see it, and here's why.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really
super
good.
important.
So for the sometimes when you get into hiring, a lot of newer entrepreneurs, smaller scale businesses that don't have the resources to create systems and processes, or maybe they just don't have it in place yet. They just need a warm body to fill a spot, which is a very dangerous place to be, right? Especially given the history of this conversation we've just had.
Right.
What advice would you give to them?
It'd be better to not hire somebody to have a warm body. It would be better. You'll be better off, because if you don't take the time up front, like I said, I think at the beginning, you're going to take it on the back end, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be a negative experience for both of you. So taking the time up front is worth it. There's a lot of things people can do now. You can actually go to, if you want a personal assistant, go to Belay Industries and, tell them exactly what you want. And so you're not tied to that. So there's a lot of different things like that out there right now. But if you're going to hire somebody on your team that you are going to employ, don't fudge on that. You need to take that time. And if it takes a month, 2 months to hire the right person, you need to take the time. It'll be worth it. And then commit to helping that person grow. That's the other thing, that having that growth mindset as an employer, you want to help that person grow into, this is another thing that's super important. Begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So how can you grow this person into the organization as the organization grows? So it's not about just what you're hiring them for right now. What is that potential in them later on down the line? Could they manage a team of people if you are the person that's investing in them right now?
I love
Like a leadership pipeline.
Yes. So that's
great.
something to keep in mind when you're hiring somebody.
I love that. How are they going to grow with the organization as the organization grows? I love that so much.
Yep.
So, Robin, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can go to my website, which is thewellnessfactor.coach, or you can find me on social media on Instagram. I think it's Robin R. McCoy on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me there, and you can direct message me.
I love it. You guys, Miss Robin McCoy here with us today. Such an honor and a pleasure to sit with you as a friend, but also as we think about getting the right people on the team and just leaning on your experience and your expertise. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah.
And I can just say from my experience, Robin, every time I've met you, whether it's been down at the coffee shop or in different environments, you're just like a light, and that
guys.
passion you talk about that you're looking for, you are a living example of it. You're walking it, which is awesome. And And so I'm just so glad to be able to pull back the curtain a little bit on your leadership experience and glean what I can. And it's been a lot just on this short conversation.
Literally every time I hang out with you,
Yeah.
I learn something. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you guys, we will see you on the next episode. That is it for today.
Elevate Podcast.
Yeah.
Out.